Welcome, my name is Jacob. Today we're going to be doing a brake inspection on a 2003 Mercury Grand Marquis. These are the tools we're going to be using, and you'll see them in the next picture. Alright, so first things first, whenever you're coming into a brake inspection, you might ask what are some of the things that could cause you to need a brake inspection. Sometimes you get brake pulsation, which is whenever the car starts to vibrate or your steering wheel can vibrate. And that can usually be caused by the rotor being warped or having heat warps, which can be caused by worn out pads or unevenly worn pads. You could also get screeching, or which is also like a metal to metal sound, which happens whenever your brake pads get low. There is a indicator in your brake pads, which is usually a bunch of metal specks in there that make contact with the rotor, create the screeching. Whenever you're doing a brake inspection, there's some of the main components that you would need to inspect would be the caliper hardware holding on the bracket and the pads themselves. You would need to check brake lines and brake hoses. You need to check the rotor. Usually check the studs while you're doing it, just because you have the wheel off, and why not? And make sure that the wheel hub, if it's a hubless or if it's an in-hub rotor, make sure everything is good to go. Alright, so first things first, whenever you're doing a brake inspection, obviously you're going to need to take the wheel off. On this car, you need to use a 21 mil socket. And first thing you're going to want to inspect is your lug nuts. Make sure that they're not stripped when taking them off. And after you get them off, as well as the wheel, you want to look at the studs and make sure that the thread pattern on all the studs is good and clean and good to go. So once you get the wheel off and you've checked the lugs and your studs, next you're going to want to check the brake lines. This is the hard line right here, which is just metal, doesn't move. And this is a soft line, just a normal brake hose. This right here connects to the caliper, and this hose goes up here and goes up to your master cylinder, which the master cylinder is what you fill the brake fluid into. It holds your brake fluid, and that's what distributes the brake fluid to all four brakes and give you braking power. Completed checking your brake hoses, hard lines, soft lines, and whatnot. Next, you're going to want to check the brake hardware, which includes these little brake clips, which hold the brake pads in. They're on the top and bottom on both sides. You also have your caliper bracket bolts and the sliding pins, and then you have two more bolts for the caliper right there. Alright, so for this step, we're going to be checking our rotor runout, which the rotor runout is going to be pretty much the difference in the surface of the rotor. So say up here you have like 20 millimeters, and down here you have 19 millimeters. Well, that would cause vibration and brake pulsation. And the only way to check that would be using a dial indicator and your vice grips up here to hold it in place. The dial indicator pretty much works. It starts out at 0 whenever you put it on, and all you have to do is rotate your rotor like this. And once you rotate it all the way around, the maximum number that it goes up to on your dial indicator will be your rotor runout. Alright, a big thing whenever you're checking your brakes is checking your pad thickness. If your rotors or if your pads are not thick enough, or if they're not to spec, it could cause your car not to be able to make contact with the rotor, and then your car would not stop. Only thing you have to do to check the thickness of a pad is take your vernier caliper. You're going to measure the lip right here, and then you're going to zero out your vernier caliper, and then just take the full reading, and that'll give you the thickness of just your pad itself. Whenever it comes to inspecting your rotor, obviously you're going to want to check for any unnecessary wear or corrosion on it. So obviously this rotor is not a good example. But all you have to do to check your rotor thickness is you're going to take your vernier caliper, and you need to get 3 different measurements on the rotor. And all you have to do is open the vernier caliper, get your measurement, and pull it off without moving the prongs, and that gives you your measurement. A caliper is a pretty simple object. All the caliper does is holds the brake pads onto the rotor and allows the wheel to continuously spin without having the brake pads move. This brake hose right here is connected to the back of your caliper, so when you're checking it, you want to make sure that there's no cracks or no damage to the connection or the hard line itself. There are pistons inside of your caliper, which the pistons get fed from the brake fluid through the hose whenever you press the brake pedal, and they push out to contract the pads onto the rotor. You want to check the seals that go behind the pistons. That way you do not have any brake fluid leaks. And also you want to make sure that the surfaces that the pads set on are pretty much clean. That way there's no unnecessary warpage in the pads. Alright, so here you have your wheel bearing. On this car particularly, this is a sealed wheel bearing. On the back you can see there's 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4 to access to get this off. Pretty much all the wheel bearing does is keeps everything in balance, including like the tire, the rotor, and everything. That way nothing vibrates, wobbles, and it all rides smooth. Alright, so once you finally get done with underneath the vehicle and at the wheels themselves, you're going to come up above the hood and you're going to take a quick look at your master cylinder, which is connected to your brake booster. You're going to make sure that there's no leakage or no seeping coming out of the lines or the reservoir itself on the master cylinder. The master cylinder comes down here and follows to your ABS box. The ABS control unit, these 4 lines right here, all 4 go to each 4 of the wheels, and there is a sensor on the back of each hub which gets controlled by this, and that's your ABS system. Alright, thank you for making it to the end of my video. Now that you guys know how to do a full brake inspection on a 2003 Mercury Grand Marquis, you should have no problem stopping this big boat no more.